I just want to preface the video that I am working on code for hopefully some more interesting math, but it's a work in progress, and I can't say right now if it's going to take 1, 2, or maybe even 4 months before I'm finished it all. So for now, we're just going to focus on quick little videos like this one, where I can throw around my opinions on stuff like Spiral Abyss. Here's a snippet of code just to kind of show that there is some project that does exist that I'm working through. And without further ado, let's have a look at the new Spiral Abyss, because this one was pretty crazy on my first clear. So first of all, just to put a little bit of context for the clips that you can see in the background, I'm just going to identify a little bit how powerful each of the characters was. So there were two main carries on these teams. One was Baal and one was Hu Tao. They both have their best in slot 5-star weapon on this account, so that definitely did make things easier, and it didn't take a lot of attempts for me to fully clear it with 9 stars on floor 12. Some of the other characters weren't as powerful as on other accounts. For example, Bennett running Festering Desire gives him a low base attack, and then that'll actually decrease the attack buff he's able to give the rest of your team. It's alright for him as he has energy recharge and it helps his E skill a little bit, but the Bennett in this showcase is actually built basically for healing, so it's HP and probably healing bonus or something. It definitely hits a lot less than a Bennett with something like an equivalent of Favonia or any other 5-star weapon or a 4-star weapon with a higher base. On the first and third floor we have the Electro Rifthound Wolves, and so you want to bring your strongest Electro characters to fight them, as they're able to shred their resistance, and then they get an electro resistance debuff, which helps you do more electro damage to them. In this run, I brought Baal and Fischl, who both were built for dealing as much electro damage as they could, and then I also brought a Xiangling and a Bennett to provide off-field damage and attack buffs for everyone. On the other side, we can see it's basically a standard Hu Tao team with Xingqiu, and then Zhongli as a shielder, and then I brought Diona because I wanted a healer. Now, I was finding, as you can see later in the video, that I was struggling a little bit with, I'd say, Diona not doing enough damage. If she's C6, then she does give the elemental mastery bonus, which will help Hu Tao's reactions do more damage. But overall, she's mostly just healing, and she's not actually helping speed up the run much. And so using other healers with maybe the new set, such as Kokomi or Chi-Chi, might also be a really good option to help increase your team's total DPS and get some extra healing at the same time. I wanted to also take Zhongli as a Geo character on the second team because of the Geo Rift Hounds on the first and the third floor. I was hoping that he'd be able to do more damage to them by applying some of his Geo to actually decrease their Geo resistance, but I found that the damage increase wasn't as obvious as I had hoped for. This is likely due to him being the only Geo character. If we had more Geo characters such as an Albedo or a full Geo team, then I think that the benefit of bringing a Geo character against the Geo Rift Hounds would be much more obvious, and the damage would be increased significantly compared to normal circumstances. So floor 12 chamber 2's not too bad. The worst part is the second half. The first part is just 2 Geofish Haps, so they have a lot of HP, but it's not the first time that we're fighting this enemy. And so most of us, if we've been playing for a few months and remember the last time they were in Spiral, have strategies that we can easily apply to and kind of wipe the floor with them. I didn't struggle with them a lot, it felt pretty easy. The hardest part of the second floor is definitely the 3 Magokenkis. As long as you have good dodging skills and potentially a shielder, then the 2 Geovishaps shouldn't be too much trouble to take care of. Ideally, you want to clear the Geovishaps in less than a minute, just like I did in that clip. This will give you enough time to deal with the 3 Magokenkis, because they have probably a little bit more health and can spread out a little bit more. When fighting the Magokenkis, I found that if you could group them as much as possible, they gave you the best chance of beating them within the time limit. Characters like Klee or Beidou, who can hit multiple targets and have really good AoE, fare really well here, because rather than just having one single Magokenki with a ton of HP and a phase where you can't one-shot, Now you have 3 and they are not too hard to group up. As you could see, Zhongli was able to hit all of them, so using people like Kazuha or Ganyu bursts will easily help hit all of them at the same time and slowly whittle down their HP. Using a shielder or just dodging correctly doesn't make their attacks too bad to deal with. In this run, I was using a Hu Tao that was built with a Shimenawa's Reminiscence, with lots of crit damage and really good crit rate, and a Homa. So this might be stronger than a typical free-to-play Hu Tao, or one without a C1 or without a Homa. But I found that against these 3 enemies specifically, the more AoE you can do, the faster you'll be able to clear it. So leveraging Hu Tao's ultimate is going to give you more of a benefit than just her charged attacks, because I found her charged attacks were often locking on just one of them, and rarely was I able to line them up to make her charged attack hit 2 of the Magukenkis at the same time. So I basically just ended up charged attacking each one of them individually until they died, which worked because the Hu Tao here does enough damage for that. But if you're able to use abilities that can hit all of them at the same time, such as linking Xingqiu with a Beidou ult, and then you're getting the Beidou ult bouncing between them, and also electrocharge reactions bouncing between all of them if they're not too far apart. Teams that can do really good AoE, even like National Team with Xiangling being able to vape or even just hit most of them with her ultimate, will do really well, and same with Kazuha. My ending was a little bit sloppy, and you could see that I barely finished it in time, and so with this team and a little bit better gameplay, I'm sure you could cut it down by maybe 20 or 30 seconds. But otherwise, there is a relatively high level of investment that you need to have in your characters to clear the 3 Magukenkis in a reasonable amount of time. I found the last floor to be the hardest, and that was probably because you had to group the enemies together. But once you were able to group them, then it significantly sped up the time and cut down the amount of DPS that you needed to do. In the first clip, you could see the Sentinel teleporting back, which made me reset the floor immediately, because I knew that in order to do this quickly enough, I basically had to finish both of them at the same time with one Baal ultimate. Teams like an Ayaka Freeze team, who are able to immobilize both of the characters and then clean them up with just one or a couple ultimates, will do extremely well. Hopefully tomorrow I can show a little bit of footage of what it looks like when Ayaka clears some of these floors. But for now, we're basically just using the Baal, and the Baal is carrying on this account significantly. After dealing with the 2 Ruined Sentinels at the beginning, we get 2 Electro Rift Hounds that we have to defeat. These 2 are a little bit different than the ones on the first floor. That's because their level's higher, so it does take a significant amount more damage or hits to defeat them. Because of the level difference, the damage calculation is done a little bit differently, and so you'll be hitting smaller numbers than before, and it's going to feel like they're giving more resistance, and you might need to use everybody's ultimates more times and cycle through your rotations more times than on the first floor. In this run, you can basically see Baal carrying the entire team, Bennett's providing support, Xiangling is kind of hitting 15Ks with her ultimate, which is alright, and then Fischl is doing pretty decent electro damage. Because there's only 2 of them, the fact that she's a single target dealer doesn't matter as much, but she's still a very strong pick for dealing with the Electro Rift Hounds due to the Electro Resistance Shred. One thing I want to point out if you're struggling on this floor is how to group up the first 2 enemies. My strategy is that I run to the left one first and stand right in front of it a little bit to its left, and then start with potentially my Bennett E or my Bennett Q. This will usually make the other one jump into the air and land on top of you, and then you're basically grouped up. Sometimes the one on the left will actually do sort of a teleport backwards, but it's a little bit inconsistent, and if you position so that it teleports in the direction of the one that spawns on the right, it's not too bad because they end up fairly close, and you can sort of group them up like I did in this last run. If you're able to group them up and then hit them really hard with some AoE attacks or something like Baal's ultimate, then you'll save yourself a significant amount of time at the beginning and leave yourself more time to deal with the wolves. The hardest thing I found to deal with the wolves was their movement patterns and how sometimes they back out and then lunge in. and there's certain times when you can't hit them. There's a couple times I was able to try to predict where they're going to show up and preemptively start Baal's ultimate to try to slash them right once they reappear. Once you get a little bit more used to them after fighting them a few times, you get a better feel for how much they move, and when you know that they're going to stay in one spot a little bit longer and they're not going to disappear with one of their lunge attacks. On the last floor of this Spiral Abyss, you just have to deal with a couple Geo Rift Hounds, and the way that I would do this if you could pick anyone is try to use at least 2 Geo characters such as Albedo or Zhongli. Those two are a really good support pair that fit into almost any team, or just run a pure mono Geo team. In this clip we just brute force it with Hu Tao. Now I want to ask, did you catch that? Let's rewind that and look at it a little bit closer in slow motion. This is one of the pitfalls that you can have when you're not used to the attack patterns of the Rift Hounds. There are times when the Rift Hounds will float into the air just before they lunge. At this moment, melee attacks such as Hu Tao's charged attack will completely miss them, and we can see that happening very clearly to me in the slow motion. In my opinion, the best team to clear this last floor with is a mono Geo team, with running an Ito or a Noelle as the main damage dealer, and then a Zhongli, Albedo for off-field support, and finally a Goro once we're able to get him. Right now people are still farming Albedo's and potentially Noelle's new defense set, and so it's going to be a little bit difficult to see how well they do, but I'm sure you can find a couple examples on YouTube with these 2 characters clearing the new Spiral. I'm going to try tomorrow on my main account, and we're going to be able to see what they look like underleveled and potentially extrapolate how much better they can do it. If they're going to be able to clear it already, then that's just going to be really good news, because they're only going to get stronger from here as we finish farming the defense artifact and fully complete the team by adding Zhongli and Goro. Overall, this Spiral Abyss doesn't seem too hard, and I would say that's because we can get around some of the DPS requirements with skill by utilizing positioning of the enemies and also the mechanics of some of the enemies such as Rift Hounds and their weaknesses, which is their respective element. One aspect of Spiral Abyss that I didn't touch on and I struggled with a little bit when I was clearing it the first time was the tower defense on floor 11. It's really easy if you have Venti. If you don't have Venti, you have to go use kind of geo constructs and gimmicks such as those, or you just have so much DPS that you just kill everything very quickly. So using people like Xiao or Ganyu will probably just allow you to clear the enemies fast enough so that you don't have to worry about them shooting the monolith. If you liked the video, please like and subscribe, and I wish you all the best in the new Spiral Abyss.